Good morning and welcome to our September 2018 customer webinar. Today, Christine Masters, Director of Product Management, will introduce the all-new Promo Designer block and show you how to entice users with promotional overlays, slide-ins, and other offer messages. We'll also be joined by Susan Bell, Senior Product Manager, who will show us some of the new features of the recently redesigned BLOX Now app. In the room, we also have Teresa Nelson, Director of New Business Development, Rich Griffin, Product Manager, and Tim Turner, Product Manager. And I'm Cherry Wolf, Marketing Specialist for townnews.com. The presentation will take about 30 minutes and a Q&A will follow. At any point, you can type a question into the chat box, but we'll wait to answer them at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available early next week. Take it away, Christine.
Great, thank you so much. Today we're going to talk about a new feature that we launched, I think 2 weeks ago or so, called the Promo Designer block, and it is something that is available now, and many of you have started using it already. But we're going to kind of go into the reason why we set this up and kind of all the amazing things you can do with it. I have a couple of step-by-step kind of ideas to show you, as well as ways to kind of A/B test different different promotions that you might be using, as well as how you can actually personalize these and target specific users. And then we'll hand it over to Susan to walk through some of the new features of the Now app, which are really awesome. So to get started a little bit, we have had a lot of requests over the years for different ways to do kind of promos, whether it be overlays or slide-ins or any kind of promotional message or offer that can be targeted to users and that can promote specific needs and things on the sites. We had a couple of roadblocks in terms of how we wanted to implement this, so it's kind of honestly taken us a couple of years to talk through this and discuss different ways we were going to implement this, and we've done several different tests with several different customers on how we were going to do this. And so I think that we have now a really good solution for this. I know that a lot of people, because we didn't offer this, we're doing either customizations or using expensive third parties. And now that we have this option, I think that everyone will be really excited to be able to use this as a native blocks function and to kind of get rid of all of the customizations or third parties that you might have been using previously. I will say that we do have several new additions that we are adding to this, and a couple of tweaks that we're adding that are going to be out in the next couple of weeks. So you can look forward to some of those things coming soon. And we are really interested in additional feedback. If there's ideas or things that you want to do, or even kind of design functionality that you're interested in, definitely let us know. And if it's something that can be added in there, we would be very interested in finding out what that is and seeing what your guys' needs and wants are. So to get started, like I said, this is a block, and the fact that it is a block that can be placed on a page means that you can use the built-in functionality of the blocks interface to target the the overlay or the pop-up to, I'm going to say overlays going forward, but depending on kind of the design choices that you make, it may or may not be specifically an overlay, but you can choose to target the overlay message to a specific section or to a specific type of page, like the front page, the index page, the asset page, the video page. All of those things that you can do with blocks and how you use blocks on a normal basis can be done with this particular block. So if you want to place something that has a pop-up that only shows up on the front page, you're able to do that by placing it in a region that only shows up on the front page. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Now that we have utility regions, which are essentially virtual regions that show up on either specific pages or at specific points in time, you are able to use the Promo Designer block in those specific utility regions, and you can use those to target specific places like just video assets or just story pages. So that's something that, again, you can use that built-in functionality of blocks to change how you want those overlays and those promotional messages to show up. So one of the things that we did as part of building this new functionality is that we were concerned, and this was, frankly, one of the technical hurdles that we had that we wanted to kind of build around, was the idea that either because of inheritance rules or because of, on accident, if someone were to place two of these blocks on one page, we really didn't want to have a situation where you had two overlay pop-ups happening at one point for one particular user. Obviously, that's a bad user experience for that poor guy. So one of the things that we've done as part of this block is that we've built in the idea that there can only be one pop-up per user at a time. So even if you have some kind of scenario where there's 3 different messages on that particular page and a user qualifies for all 3 messages for whatever reason, essentially the first one that loads or the first one that hits that user will be the one that is displayed to them, and no additional messages will happen on that page. Even if even if you did something like a pop-up overlay and an exit intent, that they theoretically might not happen at the same time. We just made sure that, again, for user functionality and user interface purposes, we just wanted to make sure that that does not trigger at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind for troubleshooting purposes. If you have a scenario where you're trying to figure out why this particular message isn't showing up, it could be because there's another pop-up that happened on that page. If it's the case that there are 2 overlays on a page and I don't qualify for one, but I do qualify for the other, I will get the one that I qualified for. So there's no kind of conflict there. We just essentially make sure that there's not a bunch of pop-ups stacking on top of each other, like in those movies where they have like all of the windows on top of each other. We don't want to have that happening. I will say that another thing to note in terms of how you're planning this is that just like any kind of code that you're placing into the page for promotional messages that might happen only at certain times but not other times, the code for each of those things is technically on the page at the point where it's being evaluated to show to particular users. So I would be careful to make sure that you don't have scenarios where there's 20 different blocks on the page that might hit 20 different types of people. Hopefully there's no need for that, but I would just be careful in terms of how many of these you're using and what the impact is in terms of just the amount of code on the page in and of itself. But that being said, I think that in general, by using inheritance rules and by using utility regions, we should be able to keep this to 1 or 2 or 3 of these types of blocks on a page that qualifies for a specific user, and that would be absolutely fine and recommended. So just really quickly, and I'm going to go into much more depth on this in a couple more slides, but just a couple of examples of things that you can do with this. Different types of subscription offers. When users come into the site, you can give them a 99-cent offer or any other kind of circulation special you might have going on at the time. Different kind of promo codes for if you have an ad owl classified ad entry placement offer going on for Valentine's Day, like maybe 50% off for Valentine's Day, you can do kind of an overlay to users, letting them know of that promotion. Obviously, things like email newsletter signups, getting people to sign up for newsletters, that's available as part of this. Any kind of new services or new offers that you might have, if you have a new section or some kind of a new feature that you're launching as part of your site, or even as part of your publication or station, you can promote that in one of these overlay messages. And then obviously any kind of classified ads, specials, promos, any of that type of stuff, this is great for those types of situations. So getting into the technical side of this a little bit in terms of how this is set up. As I mentioned, this is a new block. So if you go into your block editor, create a new editorial static block, and you can create that as a new block type. There's a whole bunch of options available in the appearance tab for how the block functions and how it can be set up. There's a bunch of different options for, and they're all, you can kind of just go through each of the different little groups of options, and it's very straightforward in terms of how, what they do and how they're set up. But you can set up the background color, the outline, the shape of the overlay itself. It can be either a rounded rectangle, a square, or it's basically an oval depending on how much content you have in it. You can set a background image. There's an option to have a sticker, which is a little button that goes kind of at the top of the page to draw attention to it. And then obviously a bunch of text areas that can be added as well. There's also an area for the interactivity, and you can choose the type of overlay that will be included in terms of the functionality that it has. You can have, there's a couple different kinds of triggers that are supported. Obviously, you have a trigger when a user enters the site. You also have, and it says in here when you choose this, the overlay when the visitor enters the site after a display timer. And then down here, there's a setting for a display timer, which is in seconds. So if you have an overlay but no display timer set, that will happen essentially as soon as they come into the site and the overlay loads. But you can also choose to have that be after 2 seconds, which will be a little bit more kind of disruptive, but it might be more impactful too. So depending on what your goals are. But essentially as the page starts to load, then after 2 seconds, the pop-up will come up. There's also something called an exit intent, and this is something that is a really interesting new thing that has been going on in the industry the last couple of years, where essentially when you express, when the user expresses some desire that they're about to leave the site or that they've become disinterested in the content, there's several different ways that we look at to determine that. When we determined that the user is at risk for leaving the site, then we give this overlay that basically you can try to re-engage them with the content, either by maybe asking them to subscribe, asking them to look at some other page or some kind of interesting content that is elsewhere on the site with just pointing to another section. You can ask them to subscribe at that point in time. There's lots of ways that you can kind of try to get them to re-engage with your site through the exit intent message. And there's another one with where when they hit the end of the content, and it triggers mostly by the end of the story page, so it's not essentially the bottom of the page, because sometimes that can be really far down there, but this basically is the end of the content of the page, like the end of the article. And essentially when they hit the end of the article, then this is another point where you can trigger a promo message at that point also. So that would obviously be great for signing up for a newsletter, or if you like our content, please consider subscribing to our paper, that sort of thing that happens at the end of the content. Then in addition to the timer, so again, the timer works on the entry of the site, but not necessarily on the exit intent that happens immediately, obviously. Then you also have an option to display again. And this is really important because this controls how often a user will see the promo overlay when they visit the site or when they interact with the site. And if you have no time set right here, as I have in this example, that basically will pop up every time they view a page. So every time the page is on, they qualify for it and they'll get that pop-up. So that's unlikely, to be something that you want, hopefully. This is set in hours, and this basically sets a cookie on that browser that will not show that particular pop-up again for that period of time. So if you wanted to do 30 days, you would write 720 in there, which is the number of hours that are in 30 days. And so that's just an important thing to note, that the, when you're looking at how often these are showing up to specific users, you are very likely to want to control how often those things show up. Another option that we have that's I think going to be really interesting for people is that we've built in Google Analytics UTM tracking into the block. By default, it's turned off, and you can click this button to turn it on. Everything is filled in already for you, pretty much except for the campaign name. By default, I think it just says campaign name in there. But in general, a lot of these things can probably just stay the same, though of course you can change it to be whatever you want. But usually you'll want to have different campaigns basically to be able to tell the difference between the different types of messages that you're doing. And if you wanted to have, let's say you had 5 different subscription related messages that you're showing maybe on different sections, or you do 1 week here, 1 week here, 1 week here to test them, then you can have one campaign that's for subscription messages, and then you might want to change like the campaign content to each of the different promos that you're doing, or change something else in here. If you wanted to have different campaigns for them, you could do that also. And then that way you can use those values to look at your campaign tracking in Google Analytics and see how each of the different types of messages behaves and how people react to each of them, and then you can see which one is more successful. So using UTM tracking, it's possible to create goals or different types of comparisons, and you can actually say, for this particular campaign, I want to make sure that 15% of the people click on it, and then you can see how successful that goal is and compare it to other pop-ups. So it's a great way to do A/B testing and to kind of see how the different messages perform, and if you can really see what's working for you and what people react to positively. And I also wanted to mention our IQ Engage program. There is built-in integration with our IQ Engage program so that you can use that information in order to target promotional messages to specific audiences. So just very quickly, the IQ Engage program is essentially a data tracking program to track behaviors of users and how they interact with the site. And then the integration with the Promo Designer actually allows you to use the IQ Engage behaviors. So you establish kind of the behaviors of the user in the IQ Engage program, and then you can target specific messages to specific groups of users based on their behaviors. So this is really important for things like, subscription offers. If you want to give a 99-cent offer to your users to try to promote a specific, specific circulation offer, it's obviously going to be beneficial to make sure that existing subscribers who are logged in and an existing logged in subscriber are not seeing those messages. For one thing, you might not want them to know about the reduced price. And then for another thing, you might not want them to just be bothered by seeing the pop-ups in general that don't apply to them. So this is a really great way for you to target specific groups of users with these promotional messages. So a couple of examples of things that you can do right out of the bat. I mentioned, not targeting subscribers with subscription promotions, but same thing for newsletter signups. If there's a user that's already signed up for the sports mailing list, you don't want to target them with a pop-up that says, please sign up for our sports mailing list, every 30 days, because they already did and they don't want to see that pop-up. So that's something where you can actually create an audience in our IQ Engage program of the users who are using the IQ or using the email newsletter for sports, and then make sure that you basically use this hide from audience functionality and then that promotion would not be relevant and would not show to those particular groups of users. So it's a really great use of a combination of the kind of the two programs with the Promote Designer and the IQ Engage program. I will say that kind of as we were getting ready for this webinar, I was talking to some of the people involved in the IQ Engage program, and I mean, I can speak for myself personally, you know, the program that we have now, even if you're not using it for any other purpose, although there's many really good reasons to use it, such as the behavioral content recommendations is a really easy one. But even if you don't use it for anything else, just using it for targeting promotional messages to groups of users in order to make those messages less annoying to those users that don't benefit from those messages is a great use of IQ Engage, and the pricing on it is very good pricing for this. So even if you're not using it for other things and you're interested in using the Promo Designer block, I would just give your sales rep a call to talk about what the pricing would be for your particular site, and you might be surprised that it's a very affordable. Thank you. I was going to say competitive, but I don't really mean competitive. But yeah, it's very affordable pricing, and you might be very happy with what some of the pricing would be for this. So definitely call your sales rep and ask about the IQ Engage program if you're looking at using this block. And then I will say one more real quick thing. In addition to non-subscribers and email, you can also target specific users who are interested in specific sections. So you can actually make a group of users that are interested in sports because they go to the sports page 10 times a month or something like that. And then just target a message to those users saying something like, did you know that we have a special sports program that we run every other week, and please tune in at 4 p.m. for our sports show on this page. And then you can, again, just promote something specific to those users who are interested in that particular content. So it's a really great integration with that program. So I wanted to get to a couple of examples that are the types of things that you can just get started on right away and use. They're real kind of no-brainer implementations of this block. So the first one would be if you are an email reach user, you can do an email reach pop-up to, again, I would recommend using the IQ Engage program to target that to people who are not currently signed up for your email newsletters. But even if you don't, a lot of people are very successful getting an overlay to promote your newsletters. So you could do something like on an article page, maybe on each of your article pages, have it only run every 30 days, so again, 720 hours, and have it pop in on a 2-second delay, and then target that for a specific list related to that section. And then by doing, you know, for example, if you have a sports list, then only put it into the sports section and only on the article pages. You can use the article only utility region. Just put that in the utility region for articles and just in the sports section. And then you'll have a pop-up that will show on just the sports section every 30 days to promote that email newsletter. And you can target it to your email, your sports newsletter. So that's a great example of something that can be very targeted and very effective. Again, using the IQ Engage program, you can make sure that people who are already signed up for the list don't get that pop-up. Another example, and I didn't really mention this previously, but something else you can do with this block is if you don't have any interactivity options turned on, and I showed you kind of, there's some check boxes when you're setting up this block in terms of the type of interactivity. If you don't have any interactivity, it's basically just a block on the page, and it will show in line in the page just like a normal block. But it gives you all of these great design options that you can add to it. So you can still use the sticker, you can still use a background image, you can still use all of the different colors and shapes of that block. But this is kind of an example where I built a little promo block that you could use to promote your like an iOS and a Google Android app, and then when you click on the page, you could go to a page that just shows the different types of apps that you have. If you have Alexa integration, if you have an OTT product, you can have that all kind of listed on those pages and have different ways that the users can sign up for or be aware of those different programs. So that's a really great example. Obviously, this could be used for, a magazine or a contest that's coming up or an event that you're promoting. Any of those things can be used with this, and it's just basically a button, and the button goes to a page that you designate, and then you can just use the design features to set it up how you want. But again, if you're not using any of the interactivity, then it essentially becomes just a block on your page, and you can use it that way as well. Again, using IQ Engage, you could have this block show up for people who are subscribers or not subscribers or interested in sports or not interested in sports, that type of thing. So again, even though it's on the page, you can use it alongside the IQ Engage program. So here's another example that I think is I kind of mentioned this previously, but a great example of using this functionality. As a user becomes showing exit intent on the page, so as they start to go to the back button because they're going to exit out of that page, or as they go to close the tab, or any of those types of things where they're showing us that they're about to leave the page or they've become disinterested, you can have a pop-up that will show up that will be trying to re-engage them somehow, either get home delivery, sign up for a list, those types of things. Again, you can have something targeted based on IQ Engage audiences specifically for people who are interested in, local news or crime. You could promote, did you know that we have crime articles posted every afternoon at 2 p.m. Please check back at that time, those types of things. So getting them re-engaged when they're showing intent on exiting the site is a great use of this. So, and lastly, I thought this was one of our customers was doing this, and I just think it's a great example of having kind of innovative thinking in terms of using exit intents or other types of messaging. But essentially what they're doing is they have a subscribe page, which is just that they create a URL called subscribe, and they link to that in different links throughout the site. And on that page, it shows a subscription block that has their pricing and other information about how to subscribe on that page. And essentially, if they're showing exit intent on that page, so they click on subscribe and then they're like, hey, forget it. And then they go up and click the back button, or they're about to click on one of the closed tabs, one of those things. Or if they are having trouble and they can't really figure out how to sign up or any of those types of things, at the point where they show exit intent, we can show them an overlay message that says, hey, are you having some problems? Do you need some help? We can help you. Just call us. Forget about whatever problems they were having with signing up. Call us right now and we'll help you. So I think that's a really great way to target those users at a point where you know that you got them to the subscribe page, but you didn't convert them. And so this is like a second way that you can, before they leave the page, you can try to target them before they leave. This would also be a great example of throwing them a 99-cent offer or a free trial or any of those types of things where if they're abandoning because of pricing, for example, you might be able to hit those people with a secondary message. So that's a really interesting use of this product. And again, you can do that by creating a subscription URL, targeting any of your messaging or links around that page to the subscription URL, and then just putting an exit intent promo designer block on that section, and then that way you can hit those users at the point where they're interacting with that page. So a couple of really quick best practices. I mentioned already just the idea of using the display again timer to make sure that you're not overloading users with promo messages as much as possible. But do note that it's a cookie that's set as part of the browser. And so every page or every different device that the user uses to interact with the site, they'll most likely get that message again on each of those devices. So if they have a tablet and their work computer and their home computer and their phone, and all of those places they are, looking at those articles, then that's something where, in theory, they might get that pop-up on each of those devices. Now, each of those devices will have its own timer for 30 days, but that's why you kind of have to watch how often you're using these things and how many of them you're using throughout the site, that you want to make sure that you're not overloading them and that you're limiting the messages as much as possible. Again, using something like the IQ Engage program to limit the users who will see it will be another way to help with that. I'll also mention to make sure that you check how this looks on mobile. Mobile should be the first place you look for checking how your site looks. It's on most, well, I think probably all at this point of our sites, more of your users are looking at your site on a mobile device than they are on a desktop device. And that's not even if you include tablet. We've got lots of people now who have 70% and above are looking at their site with mobile. It's just incredible. So make sure, obviously these are all responsive and they will automatically fit to a mobile device, but you want to make sure that in terms of the length of the message and what the photo looks like and how the photo's cropped, those types of things, you want to make sure to check how that looks on mobile and then make changes to make sure that you have the optimum experience on the mobile device. And I did want to mention also that for, obviously, if you've been to our previous webinars, we are very on board with better ad standards and making sure that everyone's compliant with better ad standards. This is a consortium of different companies that got together that established some guidelines for what they feel are different techniques that you might use in advertising that are annoying to users. And having an overlay on top of content is one of the techniques for ads that users find is annoying and that would be considered not compliant with better ad standards. Doing messaging for, obviously for promotions for the actual site itself, as long as it's not an ad, that is still acceptable. But if you are using this block to have, like, if you're selling it, or if you're saying, if it's sold to a commercial party for a price and that becomes an ad, then this might cause problems with better ad standards compliance. So that's something to consider as part of using this. And now I'll pass it over to Susan, who will talk a little bit about the Now app.
Thanks, Christine. So we'll just kind of run through these features pretty quickly due to time, but if you want kind of a full list to kind of read about these a little bit more closely, they are on the release section of our website. And of course, you can always contact your salesperson for a deeper dive for a demo. But some of our new features on the Phase 2 Now app that is being released as we speak is we did a lot of design changes on the Now app, which you will see. Some of those changes are just rounded edges, rounded corners. We gave a little bit more space between the asset cards and did some gradations instead of just hard boxes, just to apply a little bit more modern design techniques to the app. We also included, to improve functionality of the app, to improve things like page views and things of that nature, with side-to-side article swiping. And within that side-to-side article swiping, after you click on an article, we also did include an interstitial ad unit. So this app has a lot of revenue improvements in there, the interstitial ad being one. Also, we included the addition of different ad sizes in the ad card that was in the home asset feed. Originally, that was just a 320 by 50, just as a standard ad unit. People who are utilizing fill inventory, programmatic ads in those slots, we wanted them to be able to utilize all of the inventory that was coming their way. So we included a 300 by 250 and a 300 by 50 and a 320 by 50, I'm sorry, to make the best use of that inventory. That card automatically adjusts for the different ad units in there. So that's some really great revenue opportunities within the ad that are added. Also too, we did push notifications in phase 1. We've added some kind of channel support within this phase 2 release. So as your users accept the push notifications on their devices, they then can go to a settings panel within the app, and they can turn on and off the different channels where they would like to receive notifications. And those channels are set by the customer. So there's not really a limit to the channels, but you can set that up during the onboarding process. We did a lot of color updates and customizations in this app. We had a lot of things that were kind of locked down in the previous version, such as the background and the menu color, some of the words, and you can kind of see it on the screen right here where we had topics and more. So we made those adjustments to really kind of everything is adjustable in here. Your header colors, your background colors, your menu colors, the words for the sections are now customizable. Before also too, your topics were listed in ABC order. As you can see there in the example, business, cuisine types, entertainment, now you can kind of readjust that order. So we just wanted to give you maximal flexibility in the app, not only to include your color branding in here, but also to be able to display the information as you wanted to. So some of the other changes that we have in there is this also is a universal, it has a universal app view on the iPad and the Android tablet. You were able to view the app before in phase 1, but you had to go under mobile devices to download those apps on tablet devices. So that will allow a lot more device support, and you get a credit for a lot more audience there. We made some adjustments throughout the app, adjusting the home button so it was consistent throughout the app, and added the weather icon on all the pages. And so those are, and custom subsections I'd like to mention as well. So the menu slide out bar was really kind of consistent throughout the app. Now as you go into a subsection such as business, you're able to have all the same customization features as you do on that main menu. So if cuisine types was something on your main menu under topics, as you went to cuisine types, then the whole slide out menu can become a subsection for that. So you could list out different subsections for that cuisine type, and also control all the coloring. So each section really can become its own thing as you move through there. And again, if you have any questions or kind of want more details on that, just let us know. That was just kind of a quick look. And this is just an example of the screen that you have up right now. And this is just all the customizations, of course, are available in the BLOX panel for your Now app. And this is just showing you how you can, all the different customizations for the menus, the text colors, the header colors, the background colors, and then the inclusion of the interstitial ad unit that is down at the bottom there. And of course, I do like to bring up also too that the video ad unit, if you do have video assets that are playing in line, that we do have that video ad unit pre-roll that is also available to you, and then the ad banner unit with the additional sizes in there.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Susan. So all of our questions are for the promo designer. So first off, someone said, I just want to say that I love this. Thanks.
Yay, thank you, Mom. No, just kidding. Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, I know that we've had so many people ask for this type of functionality for a long time, so we are very happy to be able to bring this to you finally.
You did touch on quite a few of these, but we'll go through them. On overlays, can you turn off for mobile and or desktop?
So what you would do is the same type of CSS targeting that you would do with a regular block. You could use the visibility classes to hide this from that particular that particular section or that particular device. So using the same types of visibility classes, you could have it just show up on desktop versus tablet versus mobile.
Does this work on the app, or is it just for the web?
It's just for the BLOX website, yep.
Okay. Does it work on static pages?
It will work on any page that you can get the block onto. So if you're targeting it to every single page and a user goes to a static page, then it would pop up for that static page. But if you were trying to target it to a specific static page and you don't have a section for that page, then that might be more difficult to do. But essentially with static pages, for the most part, you can create a URL and place it in that URL, and then you could actually put this onto that specific URL.
Okay.
Hope that made sense.
If you have an ad overlay serving through DFP, for example, how does that work with the pop-up from this?
If you had an ad overlay, it wouldn't have knowledge of this at all, I would assume. So you could have an issue. You should think about that when you're using this in terms of, how the pop-up would overlay each other. So yes, they would, have potential conflict there if you were doing that. But again, for the most part, pop-ups with advertising in them is not Better Ad Standards compliant, so you run risk of Google Chrome reviewing your site and determining that those are not compliant and then blocking the ads on those pages. So that is something to consider. But if you have a compliant overlay ad, which there is a way to do it where it's not covering content and things like that, those might be used together, but it would be difficult to do.
How do you count a conversion? Does it register an actual purchase or a shopping cart abandonment?
So depending on how you have your Google Analytics set up, that is something that, I don't know, do you want to talk, Rich, about, we've got our analytics person here right now, in terms of, like, let's say subscription, for example. If I have a subscription promo, they can click on the subscribe button within the promotion, and then that particular click will track essentially that particular link converted. But then after that, there are ways to track the like through the enhanced e-commerce how that particular user flows through the system and how the entire
Are they talking about specifically with this block and because we don't have any e-commerce or subscription tracking built into that yet?
Not this block, right? But so
we do have into our purchase workflows our analytics enhanced e-commerce support built into that, so that you can get all the reporting appropriate for that for the shopping funnel and the checkout funnel. It's not a shopping cart per se. It's built that way in analytics, but we strategically use all of the data points in that funnel so that it makes sense with the workflow and blocks. And I've got some documentation on how that works, or if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on that.
Yeah, so essentially this is going to track basically the success of getting them to click on the button, and then you would use the e-commerce functionality to track the success of once they get into the system, if they convert at the very end and purchase something.
Yeah, if they're getting to a purchase page, we would start the funnel from that right. point in time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this GDPR compliant? Could someone set up a GDPR notice that they've updated their privacy policy and alert everyone that way to have them accept the new policy? Or
so you could have a pop-up type block that says that we've updated our privacy policy and please check it out, but it wouldn't necessarily track specific users and who saw the pop-up or who has quote-unquote accepted the policy. And technically for true GDPR rules, you need to actually track specific users who agreed to it and then also what they agreed to at the point in time that they agreed to it. So in the sense that using this for GDPR consent tracking, that would not be something that you could do with this in terms of just alerting people that your privacy policy changed. You could use it for that, but it's not specifically GDPR compliant in that way. Now, as for the compliance of the block itself, obviously when somebody is signing up for a newsletter, they're intentionally giving you their address for the purpose of having an email delivered to them, which would be compliant under GDPR rules. So I don't know, that's I kind of answered yes and no and yes in a couple different ways, but
yeah, it's not a consent management platform
correct, yeah.
At all, but from a standpoint of it's, if they're filling it out, they're opting in, so you've got legitimate intent and you have, opt-in, you're fine for those, but its purpose was not to be the consent management platform. If you're looking for US to just let people know you've changed your policies, it could be a very good way to do that, just as an update or an alert.
Okay. Are there geo controls for the overlays? Could we make sure that a promotional overlay only appears in specific markets?
So, I don't know, do you want to talk, Tim, about what capabilities you have within the IQ Engage program? There's not a way to do that within just a standard block, but there are some capabilities for in the IQ Engage program.
Yeah, so for IQ Engage, we can target by city, DMA, and by domain. So if you're like a large group and you want to show it to a specific domain, we can subset it that way. So whatever you consider geo, that's kind of how we can segment. Kind of aligns with how Google Analytics and other people segment stuff from a geo standpoint. So we're kind of limited by, we can't really target zip codes, or we can target a city, or we can target a larger DMA area. Counties are another thing we can't really target, but so there's some restrictions on what type of geo areas we can target, but we can do some geo targeting with IQ Engage.
So if you're trying to show a specific price to a specific zip code, it wouldn't be specific enough for that kind of
Correct. Scenario.
But if you're trying to have different promos for local users versus drive-by users or versus external users, that is something that there's some good data that can be used for that.
Yeah. Or if you're a large group and you're just targeting this to a couple of your properties in certain areas, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In addition to IQ, could this integrate with other third-party data platforms? Such as BlueConic.
I am not sure. I mean, you couldn't use our audience targeting with other third parties. It could be possible with the third party if they had a way to trigger certain code at certain points in time. Yeah, I'm not sure how they would specifically work, but this isn't necessarily set up for that.
Question about the BLOX Now app. Is it possible to lock down the app just versus subscribers? We want different rules for subscribers on our app versus the website.
You want to answer that, Susan?
You can if you want to. So the subscriptions that are in the web or on the app are the same subscriptions that are on the website. You can talk about on and off if you want to use those in the app. But they'll hit the paywall within the app, and I can let Christine expand on that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean we do have the ability right now to have subscription, like Susan said, to have the subscription paywall pop up or go in front of content inside of the app as well, and then they could log in with their account, and then the content would be visible to them at that point. But the issue that you have with offering a full subscription workflow within the app is that if you have subscriptions available in the app, you have to share the revenue with, at least on the Apple side, a percentage of the revenue of those subscriptions to Apple on that side. So what we've done at this point is allowed the users to log in and have the paywall come up and allow people who already have a login to log in and see the content. But we've essentially removed the subscription workflow process so that we don't have that issue with the conflicts between on the iOS devices. Yeah, it's a little bit of a complex thing, but there is a way to do that.
And also, if you go through the stores, you don't get your data is not yours.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing to keep in mind. Subscription data.
Back to the promo designer. Can you target by platform, such as iOS or Android, or specific browsers like Chrome?
Again, I think that would, the only way you would be able to do that is through the IQ Engage program, which I don't know if, I assume you could do that iOS by device type?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really, I don't think we're pulling in those behaviors actively in Engage right now, but it's data that we could collect and then try to resurface.
We'd like to understand your use case for that. That would help us determine what we would need to do or how we could solve that problem. So if you're willing to email us or put in a ticket, we would like that use case data.
Yeah, typically the way the IQ Engage program works is once you sign up, we'll schedule a meeting and talk through your use cases, and then utilizing our data analysts and our broader team will come up with a project that satisfies your use case. So.
Yeah, what problems are you solving with that?
I want to charge more for subscription to iOS users because I know they can afford it.
According to the stats, that's right. They're the rich people.
Yeah.
Or
$1,500 phone.
I could say a few other things. But,
Okay.
I won't.
Okay. Is this a paid feature or does it come standard with BLOX?
You know, it's good enough that it could be a paid feature. And I'm actually not kidding about that. We actually have several different people who are using external services that they pay $100 to $500 and up in terms of getting this similar functionality. But this is just a block, and for the promo designer as a block and as all the functionality that you have as a block is just a free product. That's just part of your BLOX site. For the IQ Engage side, where we're actually collecting behaviors, we actually use a third party to collect the behaviors, and there is a usage-based price for that. But like I said before, I think it's definitely worth asking. The pricing is surprisingly low for depending on usage. So that's something you should definitely ask about.
Am I able to create my own audience for IQ, or do I have to reach out to the team?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of contract you have with our team. But yeah, if you're in the IQ Engage program, you'll get access to create your own audiences. We have a team in place to train you on how to use the Loadme platform so that it'll educate you on that. And we're always available to help you if you run into any issues with creating your own audiences.
And this is, I mean, and Tim and Teresa both kind of said this, but to restate it again, I mean, part of the program is that we'll sit down with you. We can talk about what other sites have done that are, so if you don't have things that you have specific ideas on things you want to do, we can talk about what other people have done that are successful. We can talk about what what programs you have and what your goals are of your site and how we can help with those. In addition to, you can kind of come at us with a list of use cases or things that you're trying to promote, things that you're trying to drive traffic to, and we can look at ways to help you with those specific use cases. So it's a great program.
Yeah, Tim, for the Engage program, we usually ask you to have some sort of measurable goal for the program so that we can show progress and that we can justify using this data. So ideally something that we can track with Google Analytics or Engage Loadme platform, so we can say, here's how many conversions we got, here's how we've been successful with implementing this program. Also, it allows us to make adjustments to improve conversion rates and stuff like that.
Yeah, just something obvious like getting more subscribers. or getting more email list signups, or any of those types of things are really obvious, great use cases.
Yeah, there's some general things that we think improve engagement on your site, and we definitely have some use cases in place already that we can give you some good advice on how to use the program to help with subscriptions and email signups, and just overall engagement.
And so Tim, one of the main features that we didn't really talk about with IQ Engage is the behavioral content recommendations. Is that, as part of this program, when we're tracking the behaviors of users, we actually will monitor that this person's really interested in sports, this person's really interested in crime stories, and we will use that to be able to surface more content of that type that is interesting to them. So that right there, in terms of the increased page views and additional page views that you get from surfacing that relevant content to them, is a lot of times worth the entire program.
As long as you monetize those pages.
Yeah.
Including the promo designer is great. Where do we find the functionality on the back end?
So it is a block, and so in terms of finding the block, you would just go to the block editor and click on creating a new content block, and then it's under the static section, and then you can just kind of go to the static section and search for designer, and then this block will come up. And then when you create the block, you'll see all of the different rules and settings under the appearance tab. I would recommend doing creating a test page and putting it on a test page, and then trying out all of the different design options and upload different images, and test it out on a test page to see how it works. And then again, you can use the block functionality to place it on the type of page that you're interested in.
Or you could just go for it.
Well, yeah. You can see a preview of it in the block editor, so yeah.
All right, that's all the questions that we have. There's many ways to stay connected with us. Again, if you're interested in a demo of IQ Engage, contact your sales rep. If you need any help or documentation, you can visit help.bloxcms.com. For support, call our 800 number or visit our website on 800-293-9576 or support.townnews.com. We have a great partner community, and that your ideas for the promo designer block would be a great thing to share there. community.townnews.com. You can see what other people are doing, ask questions. It's a really good resource. You can check the status of our servers and service at townnews.status.io. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, or go to our website and sign up for any number of newsletters. And that's all we have for this month, and we'll see you guys next month. Thank you so much for joining us.